2 years back, a doctor told him his life ended in a disease so bad it could never be cured. Yet since then he has kept playing the same old game for 2 more long years. It's 2 years since this guy died, but right before it happened, he decided to make up his own story. He started playing a brand new game and built a character just for him. He had to choose between having too many great qualities and inheriting the curse that once ruined his soul. He picked 2 superhuman qualities, but as a reward for his efforts, his mind could never recover from the damage. Chen didn't regret losing that much, because he and his character were both completely ruined by this bad news. The moment his mind finished settling on a new story, reality began to slip away in waves, and suddenly he wasn't standing still anymore. He'd been dragged into action right there. He started playing right away without any pause and was instantly drawn deep into the game. His wide eyes fluttered open in that grand, plush room, leaving him with a sudden jolt of confusion as he wandered aimlessly to look at himself in the glass. The air suddenly felt heavy with unease, and for a moment, he feared that something dreadful might have happened to him. Imagine Nox never got to become the worst character in this game, because, even at his best, he knew exactly what happened when things went wrong. He only really felt like a crash landed him right there in the room where everyone else was laughing about their own failures. He was born into a powerful family that has long served as a shield against chaos, and his younger brothers were already carving out their own paths to greatness with swords and spells. Nox was the sole one who lacked talent, yet he soon grew angry because he felt the whole world was mocking him for not being able to make a difference. Desperate for revenge, he forged a forbidden pact with the devil and instantly vanished into the innermost madness of his own story, becoming the most feared villain in it. When our hero finally woke up, he was stunned to realize he had become Nox. He then questioned why this terrifying transformation happened so easily. This young boy, barely 18, possessed a natural instinct to summon shadow like a storm. But as soon as he reached the screen to check his energy, his smile faded into a quiet, hollow ache because it was now just level 2. He stared at his terrible reputation, being a dying patient who was cursed to suffer from every illness and coughing up frostbite. He gasped as the moment hit him that this exact guy who had fixed his face back would be dying all over again. That was his last day before he died. He was still searching for the reason, but as he looked at the picture of the dying man, it suddenly clicked into his mind again. He really wanted to create that same tragic figure. I sat down at my messy desk, and I was going to die alone. At that exact second, he froze, thinking nothing of his own creation. Then a knock came at the door. There was only one unread message in the inbox, and it whispered to him, "Do you want to see what's inside?" She smiled as she grabbed her phone and checked the email. He received a letter saying he was called Chan and Nox on the inside, but nobody knew who those names actually were. It hit him like a thunderstorm when someone finally admitted they knew exactly who he was. Yuchan was simply a name for someone whose parents had never told where he was going. He stumbled back as if struck by a sudden memory, knowing that whoever had led him to this moment was someone who knew exactly what kind of lost time he could still see. That quiet message said, "I'm not sure if I've ever heard your name before, but you really do have to say something. You've had plenty of time since then, and your hard work over those 2 years has finally earned you this special moment at home. Welcome back." My boy looked at the screen with wide eyes, totally lost on what was happening right there. He asked himself gently, is it possible the messenger had changed? Did they tell him he's no longer in the old world, and that this place is now his new reality? The messenger nods seriously, telling the protagonist not to show off his true self, while urging him to enter the Eldan Academy first so he can grow strong and watch the grand story unfold under his guidance. When he finally did his part, the complete truth would all come out at once for him. A quiet moment passes as the boy stares at a blank page and thinks too hard about what's on his mind. He remembered being a little mad and finally dead as the very last boss in the game, but everyone says whatever you choose will end the same way. Doesn't that sound like a dream? Even when an inner lunatic turns into the real world, does that really mean we can stop trying to remember what happened before? He finally made a tough choice by deciding not to let anything stop him from sticking to the main story, even if it meant forgetting all those other parts of his life. He wants to figure out exactly how he's acting right now, and above all else, to make sure he can stay alive. And if survival demands he become the ultimate villain, he's all set to step into that role. He sat back and thought about what had happened since his old days, and honestly, things weren't exactly the same anymore. 2 years ago, Elias lost all his memories while being terminally ill, forcing every single minute of his life into a single, terrifying step toward death. Now that he can't feel what happened before, the only difference between them is now just the setting, the world he knows best from home. The man waits impatiently while the clock ticks away until it finally strikes 4 in February, 1812, and suddenly realizes he's running out of time. He's thinking about starting his 28th try again right now, But as soon as he opens the door, a sharp pain shoots through his wrist. When he looks at the system, it tells him one of his bad habits has been turned on because of his constant sickness. So he's got severe inflammation in his hands and needs to rest properly before he can heal up. He felt furious as he muttered, "What's wrong with that fragile thing?" As he stumbled upon the young housemaid, he could see she was just a stranger staring at him. "Oh." As she crashed down onto the floor and dove for her apologies, the young master tried to snap back to memory, but his eyes drifted to a spot where he knew his face was hiding. She looked exactly like Rona. She begged for his forgiveness and insisted that her cruel act had been the most serious crime of all, yet he refused to listen or stop hurting anyone in return. When Knox looks behind his back, the only thing he remembers is that she used to speak there, yet he still can't believe how innocent a girl could be gossiping about him, even if she's just a villain. He tries to pretend he doesn't care and smiles at her for a second, but then he knows right away the crazy monster he's actually trying to become. The silence builds as the girl quietly thinks about the future she plans to lead. Then, a little shy maid gently whispers, "Where are you going, darling?" "We're hoping for better days," and the handsome boy turns around, saying, "I'm heading straight to practice." All of the nearby servants were instantly stunned by what they heard. He turned and said, "I'm going to let Rona go." Rona's heart skipped a beat as she flinched when she heard the heavy footsteps of her master approach. She knew exactly what he was going to do and wondered if she could stop him before he made his move. As they step into the practice hall, Knox stares at himself and wonders why he never got better from dying before. If he truly wants to make it through the storm, he needs to get ready and move fast. He's not completely helpless. After playing this game 27 times, he already knows almost everything inside it. As soon as his eyes meet the status screen, he checks the hidden clues and moves on. Inner Lunatic. The story starts by introducing an inner lunatic who fights angels and demons while battling the Empire, and you know about his huge global fan base. This special part of the game is all about having so many different ways to customize it that you could try every style imaginable. But there's a catch. While low-rank characters like regular and talented can be made up and used over and over again, genius traits usually only work once for each player. His little boy thought in his head, "Genius lets someone climb the mountains so easy." But something very strange and unexpected has happened here. It turns out the game actually has a rule where getting a penalty means you're working against your own limit on what traits you can have. The system that tries to fix bad genes accidentally makes great geniuses. He's a master of both sword fighting and battle tactics, so his sharp instincts let him climb the ranks of elite warrior skill just as easily. So Knox noticed Knox was smart with a magic-boosting superpower he'd been training for months. Now that he knows what to look for in those extra traits, he keeps flipping through the system's hidden rules. He acts like a special hero who can look inside the other people's status windows whenever he wants to be part of the story. He also has this knack for mastering every scene, because no matter how the world plays out tonight, that acting skill is right at his fingertips and something he'll never let go of. When steel mentality kicks in during a fight, your mind instantly locks on purpose and you never lose your cool even when things get hot up. He knows that while some sicknesses are hard to beat, there's a specific kind of illness among the terminally ill that hurts him more than any other. His very quiet walk through the hospital makes him think he's actually an amazing doctor. If you're someone who has cold hands and feet, it's nearly impossible to get into an icy place unless you have a warm-up skill too. But if you're prone to getting sick often, you'll faint from the sickness well before you finish that entire chapter. He sighs internally, realizing he really can't go wrong. So he just takes it one step at a time until suddenly Rona stops her train of thought right in front of him and says, "We're almost there." Does she even want him actually stepping into the room? The young master stays silent before stepping out into the hallway, where the system instantly reveals a deadly curse placed upon him at birth. It cuts off his ability to grow for half every day, leaving him with double the chance of getting hit by an enemy buff. The young master finds a way out before he decides what to do about the curse hanging over him. He sits inside the training hall practicing again and again, always wondering if there's one single way to think about this problem. He finally realized that reading the beginning was all he needed to do. Then, after thinking it through, he found himself completely weak and falling onto the floor. Now he knows exactly what limits him, even though he couldn't swing a sword more than 10 times before losing his grip. After resting for some time, he slowly rose up, turning his eyes toward a pile of weapons that had gathered near him. The system tells him this story has its roots in a powerful family named Rainer, so he's going to start with a sword. It also explains that when it comes to the Rainer line, there are many sayings describing them well, but they should be called the High House of the Blade and Darkness. The legendary sword is called the Tyranny Blade because it channels dark magic into its steel, and every warrior in that family knows how to wield it with such power that they can cut down enemies. It has been passed down through generations from head to head, ensuring this cursed weapon remains a symbol of strength for all who take their place on the battlefield. Your little boy begins asking himself, how does this all have to do with me? He laughs it off immediately, thinking that swords and noble families aren't just about fighting and gold. They're about plenty and big money. Nox knows exactly why the money matters most, because he is genuinely excited about owning it. The Rainer family is legendary among the characters, which makes them incredibly wealthy. It turns out Nox doesn't even need a job. He can simply enjoy living all the way through with plenty of money he never had to spend. It seems very much possible that Tio thinks the boy will spend this money poorly. Nox isn't just anyone. He knows exactly who fits the noble heir mold, but instead of letting go, he decides to spend every ounce of his strength on it until Rona actually turns down her request. Earlier, Rona arrived at his side with a wooden sword, a towel, and plenty of water. She handed him the keys and asked if he was really going to train hard today. Nervously, the girl hesitated as she realized someone might be right there before she could move closer. He gently pressed his ear against hers to hear the tiny whisper, then slowly lifted his head to show she what he was holding in secret. Rona froze in shock as she heard the quiet whisper he was making before turning around, letting the silence settle on them. All my ideas are just trash, she muttered, pointing a finger at his confused face, and then finally calming down with a gentle warning before speaking again. Rona was already gone when they left the room, and now that silence is settling, he has no idea if Rona will ever come back in time to catch him before tomorrow. He poured over the tea she brought to him, staring at it as if he were drowning in a storm of desire, wondering why such an impossible burden keeps circling around his neck while his strength feels almost lost. The head butler, named Robble, stepped out of his office, walked through the empty hallway, and immediately stopped to talk kindly to the new recruit in the middle of nowhere. It's a strange thing for someone to suddenly stare at his own son like he's about to kill him. Suddenly, the system tells Robble that he's just a junior manager at a big estate who needs his help more than anyone else. Nox's dad isn't just a family boss. He's his very own senior advisor too. We know our son knows how tough it can be when dealing with a person named Robble. It seems he thinks most fathers won't notice him, yet he's starting to wonder if someone else is seeing the trouble going on in his home now. The boy knew perfectly how to handle the situation ahead of time. Nox stares intently at Robble, as if waiting for a sign that he shouldn't have been coming. Then, with a sudden burst of power, the man's face instantly transforms into a mask of fake joy and sadness, completely forgetting who he is. Robble answers, noting that he is at the head of the household under those specific directives and is ready to share his findings. Nox stared blankly as Nox told his son to go to a scary dinner, for this boy barely knew any family secrets at all and felt completely baffled by it. He pointed at Rob and laughed nervously, thinking that maybe he was just being silly about the plan. But Nox flat out refused every single invitation, making it look like a total surprise to everyone watching. The manager took a breath and stared at that order from the family chief, feeling like a detective trying to solve a case where no one had a clue yet. Rob will then tell his guests that someone special from the Styliner family has made their way in. She's coming for the night training, but if that little master isn't there at dinner, the whole family is going mad. That moment was when our boy understood. It wasn't a polite request. It was a direct command. Robble narrowed his eyes and asked, "Did something change about him today?" Our boy hesitated, trying to read between the lines, wondering if Robble had been hinting at something deeper than just the usual rules of engagement. Butler explained Nox was never supposed to hold a sword, yet today he walked into the training hall alone without hesitation. The boy's calm question sparked a panic in the room as he suddenly snaps back up with a harsh shout, telling the man never to get close to his boundary again without warning. No matter what he does or why he chooses to act that way, Robble isn't the one taking charge. He keeps a tight grip on himself. Robble slowly bends his spine in a bow while offering a quick, heartfelt apology. The young master leaves the training hall after that moment of tension, still pondering whether Robble has spotted anything suspicious, while the butler quietly decides to report the incident to the family head. Nox doesn't expect such a tense encounter with the head butler and feels anxious. He wonders what consequences might follow and glances over his shoulder to check if Robble is still watching him. He pushes aside the heavy cloud of negativity and starts looking at the young lady from the Styliner family, wondering exactly what she might do when she arrives. It was that night when he stepped into the big dining room, and suddenly everyone laughed at him before he even knew what to do next. They laughed when one called him a fool for showing up to get them all ready to eat dinner. Even though they joke that the twins are still holding on to old regrets over their family matters, neither person keeps their heads down. He was staring at him with such disbelief that he didn't think one of the guys ever imagined Nox showing up again. He stared directly at the maid as they caught them in a full-on fight over his looks, calling him a lost case while they laughed openly about it. Our quiet son thought he had nothing to do until suddenly his dad walked into the room and said, "Everyone is here." As our boy looks up to catch up with the man who knocked, he spots the head of the Rainhafer family walking beside a beautiful girl named Lily. Talia steps forward to introduce herself warmly to her group, her composed smile shining brightly among the crowd. Talia tells her family they are asking for night training and that she will stay with them until she's ready to go home. He invites the crowd into a warm embrace while the system immediately alerts Nox. The heroines of Inner Lunatic are all ready to fight against the coming version of Nox. The girl was destined to be the only person brave enough to give that very sword a full swing in her own face. Tio watches Nox decide to go out again, too. Our little boy feels a bit off when he hears the big man talking about him, so Talia decides to take over the conversation instead. Your grandpa starts telling the whole family to eat their dinner now. They keep kicking and laughing at him while they stand across from each other by the table. He shows his dad a list and says, "Let's decide which one gets in first." Tio starts wondering why the boss chose that path forward. He hears the teacher reveal that Eldane Academy holds the secret key to Inner Lunatic, where every student must brave dangerous demons to survive. So after everyone figured out why he's been so busy, that boy finally made the choice to go to school. He knows right now what he has to do. Get his friends and team up with him so they can stand up together for this big adventure. The big news came down the hall when their father announced. Everyone knows the rule. Only 3 people can come from any single family. The old rules kept the powerful from dominating because the Rainer family had already taken home their first 2 titles, leaving just 1 spot open behind them for the next generation to enter. We all know our boy has a very clear idea about what gets him into school. The only way forward is to keep working hard and figuring out how to get that specific ticket before he even starts forming his friendships. Tao tells us exactly why he wants to stick to the family traditions. Nox felt super pumped, so he shouted at his dad, "Oh no, my friend says I'm fighting my own brother." His dad didn't expect Nox to jump out of bed like an angry lion before anyone else could do anything. The teacher confirms the date, which is set for exactly 1 month after today, as he continues to explain how we will decide our new academy guest during an upcoming match in the practice hall. The twin brother decides not to speak until someone tries to humiliate him, when the rival mocks him with a cruel comment about his cowardice and lack of skill. Despite all the pressure, our brave boy stays quiet and calm throughout the confrontation. He tells them they can talk all they want, but when they win, the twins grow furious and demand to know if he truly believes someone like him can defeat them. Yet, our boy stays focused. For to him, this duel is simply another trial that he must overcome in order to secure the entrance ticket, and he has no intention of letting their taunts distract or discourage him. Nox confidently declares that he will definitely be the one to attend Eldine Academy. The teacher stared at his son, unsure whether to be amused or alarmed by how the boy was behaving. Meanwhile, a younger girl watched from afar with wide eyes, clearly thrilled as she learned about the little man's impressive confidence. The 2 little ones look at each other with big eyes, and one of them suddenly sneezes, which makes the whole family think they might be having an argument about who owns the candy bar. Nox rushed forward and saw a stranger staring at him, clearly something wrong with his heart. Tio relaxes at his desk after dinner, staring at a massive pile of documents from Robel's latest report as he listens to the hum of the computer and watches the clock tick by. He told Rob that it looked exactly like the news said, yet Nox's situation was actually shifting all along. Robwell nods in agreement as he looks at the report. He feels puzzled as Tio explains why the news about his own past event turns so unexpectedly into a news story for him. Even as he starts to wonder if the man who knocked at his door was possessed, Nox himself doesn't seem quite so sure yet. Regardless of why Nox was so focused, the family head noticed the shift immediately and told Robwell to keep an eye on him. By early morning, that same young master had already made it to the practice hall. The maids are whispering about the next big showdown coming up in a month. It turns out everyone at school has a secret job that makes them feel like they're on top of everything. Nox tries hard to figure out what the maid was saying, but in a split second he suddenly knows she isn't really looking at him and is just doing something else entirely. The system then tells him that his stamina stat grew by a mere 0.1%. He gasped at the tiny gain and immediately started running anyway, knowing that his biggest weakness is actually his lack of endurance. He's told the truth. To finally learn swordsmanship and become a true combat genius, he needs to get his stamina up to full strength at level 4 first. He noticed that if he weren't so tired from the curse of the week, anyone could easily do it right away and not worry at all. He found out he'd spent a whole month just getting himself up 1 point higher in strength. The system told him he'd been cursed for this week, and suddenly his growth speed was cut to nothing at all. He could barely increase his stamina because he is a terminal cancer patient who runs the marathon for just a fraction of an hour at a time. He suddenly understands that to stay on top of everyone else, he might actually have to work tenfold harder than they do. And while staring at himself, wondering why this is so hard for him, his resolve only grows stronger. He's about to go through a long road trip with no way back home, and the doctor tells him his body is okay right now. Stamina is at 15 points, which means it's basically full, while his mana has hit 30. But because he has this terminal illness, 15 can't be more than that. He decides to put that worry away for now. Rona arrives with everything she asked for last day. Our boy's face lights up as she outpaces him, making him feel relieved that this might finally help him make progress towards stamina level 4. Rona had gathered everything and felt so ready to solve the problem on her own. Rona watched with curiosity as he mixed the ingredients together and poured them into a bottle. She asked why he needed so many things because the poison is hard to manage, and these items cost money that most people hate to spend. Nox explains that his words were wrong for everyone else because they're not understood well enough, and Rona stares at him with wide eyes in surprise. Nox finally poured his freshly made mixture into his glass and sipped it all. Rona's eyes widen instantly as she realizes the hidden danger in the box and scrambles back to her hiding spot before anyone sees her. He realized he had swallowed a deadly poison from one of those 3-headed gorgons, which instantly boosted his health by a factor of 1.5. The clock in front of him ticks down to 0, and he's suddenly realizing his life was worth nothing. Nox saves Rona from getting too agitated when she tries to summon a headless servant, but he quickly realizes he can't help her anymore. Then he swallowed the glowing core, a thing clearly not meant to be eaten, and suddenly Rona bolted into panic, terrified by what she was seeing. The system confirmed it. He had ingested a golem's core and warned that his body would begin to slowly petrify. Oh wow! Suddenly another alert buzzes at your door, and the system says a secret magic trick just got started. The heart-shaped poison from the gorgon is being unleashed on the goblin's heart. Our little boy feels a special sense of satisfaction because every step along the way was exactly where he had thought it would go. The system explains that normally the golem's core is used to petrify individuals, boost their defensive stats, or build artificial golems. But suddenly, when mixed with the gorgon's 3-headed poison, it turns into a special reaction where the poison itself gets diluted away. Then came the biggest message ever told, the curse that keeps people weak from lifting away. Nox was thrilled by the sudden shift in power, while Rona remained terrified as she suspected her young master would vanish anytime soon. Nox has a second move on the line. As he takes off his shirt, Rona's fear grows even louder. Rona's heart is pounding with anxiety, but her mind races forward to wonder what Rona's next move will be. To her surprise, he slams on the table and spits out the poison so it can't hurt anyone else. Then the system alerts him that his own memories have been erased by the golem's core as well, leaving him reacting strangely to what is happening now. He sees the screen light up as a new rule takes hold for him. He now gains the special gift known as the growth spell. Everything unfolded exactly as Nox had planned. Now his system shows him a list of all the good things he's earned, ready to share out loud. He finds himself staring at a single item that barely fits his hand, a rapid stamina growth scroll ready to be used now. I wasn't sure if he'd actually tear it up, so I didn't wait for the perfect moment. It's all good to know because your body feels stronger right now. And my little boy thought he'd finally cleared out the curse, so now the growing spells stop hurting him while the magic scrolls keep his speed double what anyone else could ever do. You need a character who can boost their stamina up by almost 2 factors so they don't run out of energy before the game ends. Suddenly, he grabbed Rona and kissed her. Shocked, she stared hard at him and wondered if that young master was actually all right. Nox pulls out a towel and shoves it into her hands while yelling, "Look, that's what you're doing." She gasps as the shirt slips off his shoulders, and he starts tearing off the rest of his clothes with a startled laugh, which she immediately tries to stop. She stood frozen in confusion, staring at a young master who seemed completely lost in an unknown world. Nellie thinks she shouldn't worry anymore after the curse finally leaves, so she decides to treat his situation lightly instead. Rona asks to know if he's actually sure he'll handle it well, wondering aloud whether he should probably rest instead of staying up late. Our boy stays calm as we talk about the plan, even though he seems unsure where things are heading next. Our little boy bursts out of the garden as Rona climbs up behind him, grabbing the towel in her arms to keep running all the way home. In her window, Talia watches the fight unfold, baffled by how this weak guy accepts a challenge even against his own family. Emma nudged her hand softly to stop her eyes from flicking too far toward the youngest son, insisting on the rule about not staring inappropriately, even though Talia kept asking why she wasn't looking at him instead. His friend doesn't even carry a sword. Instead, he just runs around all the time. She remembers that even the other knights of Rainher had begged to teach her, yet she refused every single one of them. She told me she was absolutely certain by the time a week passed that he'd been beaten to a pulp, so now she knows exactly when the game is truly over. No matter how hard she fights, her heart still races when she thinks of that old man in the hall. She can't hold back the love for Emma enough to tell him she'll be right back, and runs directly toward Knox instead of letting her words get lost in the middle. A shy little boy sat stunned at the door as his mother stepped out to see what had happened. Talia feels a sudden chill as he stares at her with an icy expression and asks plainly, "What do you want?" But before she can answer, the ice melts into something warm, and the question becomes her most important conversation of the day. She thinks he's completely unresponsive because his sudden reaction to her looks made him unable to act normally. The girl stepped forward to question him, wondering if he was absolutely sure he could crush his brothers or exactly why he agreed to take on such a tough opponent. Did he really think that simply hopping through the air would give him any chance at winning? Rona silently nods in agreement as Talia challenges her. Furious, Talia screams that Tiana offers a rescue, yet he refuses completely, telling her to leave him alone without any words of thanks for his help. Rona told him softly if she spoke like that, the girls would probably hate him. He got mad at Talia for forgetting about her plan and starting on his own terms. Then Rona sighed and said it was only making things messier than they needed to be. The boy checks out Talia using the system and reads her details all the way down. He stared at the data and finally understood. Even when he tries to figure out every detail, that woman still has amazing skills. The heroine in Inner Lunatic has an almost limitless stamina, while most guys are only capable of handling about 4 units at a time. No matter how far off she might come compared to the 3 sword masters or a potential mage's power, he knows she can soon handle those levels and definitely kill many demons using her fire attribute. He knows that as Talia's fire magic burns out, white flames will ignite and burn demons like Nox forever. Reflecting on what could happen if he stays with her, he decides to protect the original narrative by avoiding death, even though it makes him wonder how it might be possible for 2 people destined for each other's demise to live together 1 month after they start training. Alan laughed and said, "This is exactly what I expected from my family." Hearing the family name makes Tyala feel like she's coming home, but her sister isn't just stronger, she's smarter and far more skilled than anyone else. She remembers when her sword snapped during a match, forcing her to question whether she can truly become a knight or if it will only make things worse. Her mind wanders back to the lessons she learned, wondering what kind of warrior she really wants to be. You need a knight who doesn't get greedy and stays humble, then gets ready to give up everything so they can serve everyone better. You have to learn how to wield your sword well to earn that noble title. Talia is staring at the wall, trying to figure out if Nox will actually beat up her brothers when they train like that every day instead of studying or playing games. In her mind, it's impossible. The next day, a sea of people gathered to watch the fight happen. Our boy and his brother stood face to face on a rooftop. Their father, along with other elders and Talia, sat on the balcony watching the duel unfold. T.O. turned to Rodwell and asked what he thought would come out. Before Rodwell even speaks, the referee rushes over and shouts out the news. The fight for entering Elden Academy has officially started. The 2 brothers stand tall and ready, with swords tucked into their belts, poised to strike home as the battle begins. A few moments before, when T.O. asked Rodwell about the possible result of the duel, Rodwell told him that because young Master Allen had done well before, he knew Allen would be victorious. The head butler then asked if T.O. was expecting something different than just winning. Because while he admitted Nox had changed, he still didn't think Nox would win. That sounded like something a bad guy would do to someone who wouldn't have time for it. He began his journey as the head butler, stepping out from behind the door to follow the path taken by the knight and the patriarch. It turns out that whether a sword is fancy or plain matters less than how hard you actually worked on it. The longer someone trains, the higher their skill gets, and sometimes, even in simple fights, those sharp edges can be made to look like something more complex. There's only one way to completely flip the odds and send anyone who stands in front of you down the line, kneeling right before them. He stared at the crumbling wall and wondered why it refused to move again. The sheer amount of skill in his hands made him think he might have inherited it, but now all that remained was wondering who else could be born with such talent. T.O. says the odds aren't 0, so if Nox were lucky enough to inherit Rainer blood, there's still a chance he would become an actual sword emperor soon after birth. Then the system tells him that his skills, swordsmanship and combat genius, are turned off for now. The boy is puzzled because his lucky stat looks too good, even though he clearly can't get enough stamina points to reach for. He was surprised to hear that the system had updated him on how much more stamina he'd gained from his training, knowing the exact amount was only plus 0.1. Rona watches him run desperately, feeling a little relief as his endurance climbs to 3.8, wondering if she even needs to keep pushing him on that journey. She giggles and replies, "It wouldn't be a big deal if you never let me have my way. So who else do I turn to when the world gets too messy?" Nox takes the towel she stole and says, "Then let's get some rest." Nah. She sits there silent, glaring daggers at the guy until he starts talking about how she's got a curse inside her head now. She says she doesn't believe him when he claims his boy's stamina is impressive. He stares intently at her, checking every inch of her while he holds up his hand as if waiting for confirmation. His breath catches in his throat when she reveals an incredible 4.5 stamina, a number that makes him feel like a little kid who is instantly stronger than most adults. He's shocked by this revelation and immediately questions why the Rainer family has become so dominant. Even after months of working out all the muscles in his legs just to boost one number, he still feels a little bit upset because she has a higher stamina score than he does. Rona tells him now is late for the fight because it will be night soon, so he needs to take a break. In the grand room of the training hall, both brothers face one another with quiet anticipation. His brother sneers and snaps. Why isn't he giving up? Even though the old man looks like a disgrace to his whole family, he really is just his own little brother, and Alan won't be able to beat him down anymore because it's too much for an adult to do that way. He told Alan that he was absolutely right, so he wanted to show his new best friend the still Reiner girl by doing whatever she asked for. Nox whispers his doubts into the quiet room and wonders if this decision will truly work out for him. The little boy told the whole truth about Alan's incredible power. His stamina level is 8. Then Alan asked, "Do you have any feelings for her either?" The boy realized that even with such a great skill, he couldn't beat Alan by anything other than magic tricks or sheer speed. The referee lets everyone know the fight for the entrance tickets at Elden Academy is starting now. He told his brothers he would let them go to their own conclusions, even if something bad came out. Our boy is trembling as he realizes the situation could end in disaster, so he must carefully hunt down the clues in his own mind before anyone else finds out exactly who sent this mysterious letter. Though he knew the law would let him live for another year before his soul finally leaves this body, he couldn't help but hope that day was coming sooner than expected. The referee asks them both if they're ready, then blows the signal and tells him go. Albin was the first to charge in, but his brave son fought back so hard that even he loved his own clever defense. Nox stared at his own hands, which were shaking as they hit each other with perfect, unshakable balance during the insane game. My hero knows that if he falls now, he'll lose every dream, yet when he rises, he gets the whole world at once. In the heat of the match, the system suddenly told him that his stamina had jumped up by a mere fraction of a percent. Alan is grinning at Nox, as if 1,000 years of hitting have made him feel incredibly refreshed, whispering that it might just be this one solid slap that will finally put the pain down. Physilia watched the fight unfold from her balcony, quietly wondering if caring about how the youngest had evolved mattered at all. Instead of focusing on that, she focused entirely on saving her last child from his family's path. Nox's weak tricks are dismissed by her. Nox changes his game so much that Tio's heart stops, and Tio wonders if he'll ever be able to make up for what he missed. When the butler steps in, Tio only has one more shot before the fight ends forever. You're right, but the real issue isn't about who takes too long. It's whether he lets things go on and lets his master get sick in the meantime. Tio shook his head and said, "Well, Alan and Hart do have good skills, but honestly, they're not quite up to the job for their first son. They can't lift a heavy sword, so they can't hold on to anything under their feet. They have no way to use it as a weapon against any enemy." He stares at the name of the hero as his heart hammers in his chest. That power feels like a thief stealing from him, so he shoves the sword back and tells the headless butler to halt the battle while he watches silently. In that fierce battle, the system keeps whispering Nox's stamina is climbing high all over again. Then it drops the bomb. He has all his power weapons, swordsmanship, and combat genius fully unlocked. Even though our boy feels so tired right now, he still has a great smile because he keeps trying hard to fix his looks again. Alan asked himself if he had completely forgotten how to be human. Nox's mind races as he sees the perfect shot and instantly fires a powerful bolt into the sky. The first thing that happened when you open your eyes was a brilliant brilliance. My little boy learned he can find quiet time when people are busy, even if they work hard all day. It's a happy time because this moment is the perfect chance for some great ideas and true creativity. He was so stunned by how the world seemed to freeze in front of him. He knew instantly that looking at an enemy move as slow and attacking with speed were totally different ways of fighting. Yet knowing the truth made using those skills impossible. Now he was ready to take the fight to his opponent. Nox strikes with an effortless, quick swing that shatters Alan's blade. The fight ends when this single move secures his victory. The young master yells with excitement about the fun. The swordsman stays completely stunned and doesn't even realize that lowering his guard would cost him money now. He knows exactly how long his magic lasts, just 5 minutes, and he has to make sure he clears it all before the clock hits 0, even if he can't wait another second. He was telling his brother that he'd always been chill with him lately, but he said things were getting too dull, so he suggested ending the conversation right away. He challenges him to face everything all at once. So Nox turns to his father and asks permission to do it for both of his brothers simultaneously. Not only his father, but everyone watching the duel is stunned by this confidence. Talia watches in confusion, wondering exactly what he's doing right now. His dad noticed a sudden shift in his energy, making him feel as if the world is starting to turn upside down. He lets the 2-on-1 spar go along with him. But just then, Facilia shouted urgently at the group, but Tio stepped up and ordered everyone to get moving immediately. The angry hearts bellowed in a roar as Alan finally caught his breath and pulled back his heavy sword before he could snap it shut. He slammed the blade against the wall with a sharp thud that shook the floor, eyes wide and defiant as the brat's furious words echoed louder than his own shout. Nox gets a loud warning and instantly swings his arms at both of his twin brothers as they rush toward him, turning from a defensive guard into an aggressive attacker right away. Annoyed and quick of heart, Alan urged his younger brother to go home before he gets too angry. Yet the other guy refused to budge, snapping up a glare from the house. The hero cheers as he finds his new blade so sharp and powerful after Hour of the Genius gave him a boost in dark family skills. He was delighted to hear the news, and now he could actually watch them strike. He slammed into Alan with the power of an unstoppable missile, knocking the guard completely off balance before his own feet finally came to rest. Talia's eyes widen in shock as she gasps, realizing she never knew such a rapid feat was even possible. Alan stared blankly as the entire room turned into a mirror of pure disbelief, wondering how something so small could suddenly become such a heavy burden. The guests were all staring at him with that same curious eyes, and Hart scolded his twin right in the middle of the spar, treating it like a serious lesson about distraction. The brothers start to get tired before they can even finish fighting, so the young master snaps his fingers and unleashes a massive burst of power. He thinks it will be a big moment, thinking that even though this is just a spar, the stakes are far higher than just swinging a blade. He genuinely feels like everything on the field could end in an exciting showdown. Years of work turned into a single crash when a brother who worked so hard left his post and ran straight for home, sending the other child right back in time with him. And then, right as everyone else left the room and the clock began to tick away, the system finally told him, "Hour of the Genius is over." The air feels heavy in the living room as Facilia roars, her voice cutting through the noise so loud she almost breaks out of the house, shouting at her two kids while she tries to hide behind a curtain. Nox stares at the scoreboard as the referee shouts, "Yes," and immediately announces he's won with young Master Nox, causing everyone in the arena to jump in excitement, including his dad. As Nox leaves the gym, he suddenly pauses and looks down at the ground. He asks, "Do I have to say something else?" while Talia whispers, "You must talk to me right away." He left the room in such exhaustion that his hands were immediately covered in red blood from pushing the game so hard for too long. The system told him he was running low on time for the genius's masterpiece, so when the clock hit its final second, it fired a powerful shockwave that slashed his life back 2 days and 17 hours. He sees this as one of life's worst setbacks. It permanently reduces his lifespan and makes him more vulnerable to sickness, even though he is already in critical condition. Yet, despite the grim odds, he finds comfort knowing the recoil didn't fire before anyone else could see it. He fears that if someone had witnessed it, his acceptance at the academy would have been canceled out of shame. Suddenly, Talia bursts into the room and demands to know how he fought off a sibling battle with such a broken body. She doesn't seem pleased. She's not happy that Tio knows her, thinking he'll always be found out when so many others are watching in the hall. The young master asked to know exactly what she was thinking, but she merely admitted she had completely misheard him. Yet it seemed as though the man really did take her seriously. Over the last month, Nox never did anything like he used to swing a real sword. Instead, she just watched him slither across the battlefield with a broken, clumsy stick. It's all about the way someone like him could actually win, which tells you exactly who they are. And now she wants to figure out just how that incredible skill was born and built. After seeing the end of the duel and watching him down by himself, she feels bewildered and seeks to understand exactly what's going on. Is it that he suddenly overrode all his family with such brilliant skill? Nox had his own secret plan, and it seemed like everyone else believed him because the bad news came from nowhere. She noticed he was coughing, so she asked if he felt okay and tried to hold his hands up for comfort. Yet he refused her hand entirely and said never touch him again. It's not just about how hard he works. He keeps losing track of himself because he loves gaming so much it hurts his head. And then there's this mysterious girl who plans to shoot him one day, and he thinks she knows exactly what he wants next. She stepped forward to apologize for never knowing how serious the man was about the sword, which made her heart skip a beat when she saw his body look so frail, as if it were born without strength. She finally understood that he had been only doing stamina training for hours. She apologized to him, admitting that pretending to be a good person was probably not his real plan either, since Emma had shown her people can make mistakes too. The swordsman felt a little confused and wondered how to handle the surprise because she sounded so honest, just like he'd seen in the game. Even though his heart knows that her bloodline makes her a true knight, he still feels he has to keep his secret for her dignity. He says if she ever finds out who she really is, please stay silent so no one else hears the truth. You could trust that she won't tell anyone about the secret. He looked over the table and wondered if anyone else would notice that she was keeping her word. Nox didn't even glance at her when she felt so sad about his absence. In Tio's quiet office last night, he told the headless butler how accurate his guess had been regarding Nox's genius and asked him if he knew anything about it. It turns out Rodwell didn't quite believe Nox was the perfect boy when he got punched. Instead, he thought he saw a really good one because everyone around him, like the kids and all those older boys who were also young, had Nox as their favorite leader. Tio nods in agreement while admitting that despite his strong stance, Nox keeps some of those hidden talents right behind his back. So the guy wants Rodwell watching him from behind a screen and telling him if he's walking in or standing still. Nox is actually looking at his own hands and wondering if he has the real power to finally wield that supreme black sword. Tio was telling him that the day was short and that finding out what Rodwell was up to was crucial. Rodwell was so sure that he would make the most of every chance for himself. It was late at night when a young master finally learned to clear his first battle after a long tutorial quest, telling everyone what had happened in this new story. Nox knows he's holding a blade that turns into real magic, even though the game mechanics and status bars are still there. He knew the odds of getting a big win were so high that taking only 2 more minutes to boost his stamina would be a huge mistake, even though he was sure it would pay off eventually. He finally sat down and stared hard into the big screen as a giant blue box filled with numbers flashed around him. He points at his luck stat and boosts it from 7 to 10 because hard work isn't enough. Luck is actually the most valuable thing in this inner lunatic world. After finishing, he checks immediately and learns that the system has given him a big discount of 27 times. A sudden wave of surprise hits him, but that's not enough. His heart races because suddenly he's faced a massive machine right there in front of him. He laughed, thinking that seeing this happening here felt so strange and out of place. It happened only in peak luck when the dice rolled so high that a higher rank became possible with just a 95% probability. He turns his gaze toward the top 4 ranks as they stand before him, where the highest tier is represented by a dazzling rainbow and the middle one holds a gleaming gold. He's hoping to grab a fortune worth gold or more. A golden letter flies to the swordsman's hand as he prepares to fight, marking the moment of supreme achievement that awakens his king in the field. He can't believe he actually got it. He revealed all the details about his power in one big, clear moment. He thinks the odds of getting that debuff skill are insane. Yet there's another bonus waiting for him. A single-use confirmation voucher that the system immediately offers to try using right this second. He knew the secret skill was locked away among his family's secrets so deep he would never find it again. Now, as the old man prepares to assemble a massive team of relatives, he waits for Tio to appear, ready to reveal what is hidden beneath the surface. It feels like he's finally ready to go back home after that long wait, especially when the graduation from Eldine Academy just finished. Vaughn, the second son of the Raynor family, should be traveling all day to train as a knight, but his mind immediately jumps to finding hidden peace and managing grain. He can't wait for any break in time now. It's the lucky part of life that she doesn't need to worry about Talia at all anymore. The guy feels completely safe because his own words don't sound like anything a girl could do anyway, so he rushes straight to the locker room, where Talia is already sitting up in her chair, making sure she's ready before even opening her door. He thought about what happened last night, and now knows that if she tries to move too fast or makes a big deal about something small right now, he'll have no choice but to keep her at a distance instead of chasing after her like she does when she gets angry. She asked him if the job was finished back then, wondering what he wanted next, but his answer surprised her entirely. Instead of giving up immediately, she went to look closely inside his eyes to see exactly where he had become so strong and fast in such a short time. She pleaded with him for at least one spar, insisting that he could tell her how he trains, even though the secret watching thing was already underway. I remember the day he saw Talia trying to hide why she had chosen to become his sister's friend instead of being celebrated in front of everyone else. Turning back to her, he tells her that before asking him anything like that or thinking about how she should train, she should first consider the talent she possesses. The young swordsman has never comforted anyone before, and he wonders what else he should say to her. After a brief pause, he advises her not to compare herself to others. She watches him leave the training hall with a heavy heart, feeling like she's about to cry because he simply decided to walk away. As he strolls through the training hall, his mind races with the possibility of her fleeing or staying, but while he tries to stay silent about the horses gathering around him at the Rainhafer barn, which is known all over for producing the finest mounts on the continent. He walks through a crowded hall where his dad and two twin brothers are waiting for him, and the head butler greets them with kind words. He's telling his dad that everyone knows exactly why he summoned him here in the first place. He tells them this magic word and promises forever. From now on, they must pick their own horses for life, knowing the young master had waited for it since they were little. He recalls reading that horses are sacred to both Rainher and Eldane Academy. So if they choose to become a mage or knight, they select one when they are young because this horse will stay with them all. He knows the academy teaches riding, and later in the story, their grand wars happen on big fields where if their beloved horse dies, he must raise a new one. He can't help but be a bit angry when he sees horses taking so much money for their rides. Plus, transportation magic is extremely expensive, he muttered, trying to keep his temper down even though the cost of getting a new horse was way too high. But now he decides to choose the best horse. So their dad told them, since Nox got the win, you're free to go first, and then warned him right away that they only have one last shot at it. Nox steps forward as he sees his father pause and look at the horses, wondering who would be picked first. He noticed the horses were all pretty cute and fine. Then, as he watched them, he spotted one horse with a different shade of coat. He pointed to it and told his dad he wanted to pick the best one for himself. Everyone went quiet as his father told them, "You'll get another try." The young swordsman stares at a blank target window while wondering why he has another chance, thinking it might just mean his bad decision will be proven wrong soon. He quickly loads the detailed stat data for his horse, only to see its rank and many summoned creatures all divided into their own ranks. He knew the horse could rise to become something truly legendary, like a gem on the obsidian table. His system told him this was the rarest kind of igneous rock in existence. He wondered if his father would be so desperate that he'd seize it himself. Yet he already knew this wasn't quite right at all because it carries such a heavy and unpleasant burden for everyone to bear. His dad told him he'd never change his plan to ride that specific horse again, knowing he had enough wisdom to keep it safe. The old man staring at the horse's hoof makes that puzzling question to himself. Why does this creature look exactly like him? He guesses that maybe he is just copying its face while pretending to run away. The quiet moment at the table felt like a storm before lightning struck, as he stared down at his trembling child. He knew this was not real. His father had told him earlier that he would never see his son again. Now, standing there alone in the dark, thinking about what he had promised himself and lost forever, T.O. called his choice a huge mistake and gave Nox the hard time that he won't be sorry for making that call. His dad left after he told him everything. The twin brothers are desperately trying to save Nox, while the young master watches in confusion, wondering why he made such a terrible choice at all. Meanwhile, the head butler steps forward and announces his own plan. He will watch over Nox and asks Nox's friends to choose their horses instead. Rodwell walks over to Nox and says, "Give me your name so I can name my new horse." Carl was chosen by the young swordsman because he loved names, especially one as strong and clear as his own sword's blade. When the character cleared an inner man who had a serious illness, he named him Carl, knowing exactly how powerful that sound would be in a moment of need for help. The boy rushes home with a frightened horse, terrified not for the beast, but for how many other people will finally see his desperate struggle to survive. When he reaches his room, he finds the animal staring at him with eyes that show it's ready to go on forever while he just wants to stay alive. He saw Rona standing there and called out, "Rona, you didn't hear me? If you don't answer right away, you'll get in trouble." She understood the man's warning right away and instantly stood up and shouted, "I am here." Did he ask her why she's still standing right here? The knight ordered her to tend to his mighty horse so he could ride along again. The girl jumps when she sees the horse lying on the bed, realizing she was meant to fix it instead of taking care of it herself. So he jokes about being sick while she rushes to work. He had nothing but no choice as she was forced to follow his lead. He knew the situation was getting weird and the next move was probably going to hit him hard. Rona couldn't handle the news when 3 days passed until Carl died. Her heartbroken cry made that sad feeling ache deeply within his soul. Rona really worked hard to protect Carl from his problems, but she's feeling kind of bad because she already knew it was going to happen. He orders her to stop crying because she's really distracting him. Carl came back and said he was fine. She felt confused about what happened to him. He smiled warmly and gently told her to stand beside him for a moment. He pulls the paper from his pocket and lifts it high over his shoulder. He gently placed his hand on the scroll and began to draw power from his own mana into it. A spark of magic ignites inside her as he warns her that this act will be illegal. It was the very first moment when he tried to hold back all that power and felt utterly stricken. losing track of what was happening. Carl decided to try again after telling his mom he'd been distracted, but now he's getting mad when she keeps trying to distract him. She thinks it'll only go wrong on her next turn instead of letting him get away with it. She laughs as he tells her she's finally got the magic sense back. In this empire, anyone under 16 cannot cast spells without belonging to the royal line, so the bloodline is nearly 3 times stronger than its peers starting at school. He's stuck staring at the scroll and can't even find a word to say to stop pouring all his mana in. At that very instant, the air in his hands suddenly glows with a soft, invisible light. You might have found the magic in every single gemstone today because he knows exactly when things go wrong and why they end up being so important to him right now. It's so exciting when he discovers that this scroll is just one-off energy vouchers he can't afford to mess up with. From that moment on, everything he does becomes pure black magic. The system finally confirmed that the old Dead Scholar's skill book was found, and also told him that his undead form could be turned back to life. He remembers waking up in a place where, inside his mind's door, there were 2 kinds of people who could come back from the dead by any means. He had either brought them back with black magic or returned them just to be strong again without needing an old self to save him. He knew exactly how much of his own kind was stubbornly sticking by its master, so completely. But the real issue is that nobody else can bring a corpse back to life, so everyone knows the true story behind the Dark family's name. They're the Marvas. Reinhar's family isn't dark. They're knights, and while Marvas are black mages who keep the undead alive, that's not what Reinar actually does. The old man stared up at the screen and wondered if anyone else from his own line of Marva descendants could actually wield those abilities. He thought about how hard it would be for a regular player to succeed when they were simply not part of that family. The truth was hidden by a special choice voucher he earned in that single moment. He took a step and felt the heavy weight of the Necronomicon, now called the Book of the Dead, in his hands. Rona goes wild, seeing dark blood shoot out of the young master's open mouth. Yet his will is stronger than his fear, and he tries to shove some more far away. Oh wow! Suddenly, he realized how low his mana was at the moment. Carl stepped out of hiding and felt his heart race as the screen flashed green, proving the system had recognized and activated that magical move with a final heartbeat before the light dimmed. Carl feels like he's finally getting bigger and tougher after all this time. He told his friend he'd made a mistake and then went to sleep with Carl awake in the dark. You're thrilled to be able to master that thing now. Party Popper Carl stares down now that he knows Carl's very specific traits in this world. Carl looked at him with a wide grin, but when he saw the change, his heart did a little flip-flop. Carl is set up as the new boss because Carl decides to become his master right away. Carl acts like he truly knows what his boss wants because everything seems to fit perfectly with his plan. Rona was suddenly feeling terrible and locked her arms around the young master, whispering that she had heard something awful happen to him. She wondered how it would let his reckless mana flow through her in such a way. She scolded Carl, asking him if he could be that careless too. She yells over the kitchen table, demanding he spit up that carrot before she leaves. Then the master's eyes go fixed on a small piece of wood hidden in the corner as if to say, "You've got more than you let me see." A few days later, he stepped out into the dark at night, staring at the road on his map as if it were a new adventure waiting to happen. He dives deep into the dark corners of the Reinhar family's secrets to finally find that second missing shard. Determined, he races against time to grab it before it slips away forever. He needs this crucial tool so he can fix his bad habit of dying. He is staring into the dark room and wondering why his heart feels so tight now that he's not playing a game any longer. It's just real life. He finally reaches the notice board where Mia said she would never return. Yet he refuses to leave because his heart is too full of fear for her safety and he cannot let anyone else hurt her again. The forest door slammed shut behind you as the warning echoed. If you don't get out before night, you'll die. It feels as though Reinhaler has locked down his own hidden forest so that only he can enter it. Even the best ranger or pathfinder can't find their way through this dark, foggy place. He found himself staring at the sign, thinking it was merely a place meant for kids to wander around. And yet, he still understands that there's another way the thing can be understood. No matter how big the grown-up adult becomes, he'll never find a single piece of magic out of that cursed forest. The more dangerous the monsters become when someone is an adult, and you remember how much trouble they cause you a few times during your journey to find the real path. The forest's missing child has a difficulty rating of at least 2.5 stars, the highest level possible, for a game where the worst thing about everything is trying to clear the scene without knowing what items would appear. Now that he thinks about it, this perfect spot is just where he found his ultimate item for his terminally ill trait. He held a glowing light and started hunting through the woods with intense focus, his footsteps echoing softly as he navigated the dark terrain. He knew that the missing child's forest needed the right direction for its smoke to clear up. The opposite way the smoke is flying means we're going against its path. The kid screams at the door just as the thief rushes in, demanding to see him immediately. But as he turns his back on them, the attacker stares into the empty room and wonders why the kid hasn't left yet. In the royal palace today, Talia sits alone while staring down the stairs, utterly confused after she couldn't figure out why her beauty didn't make him smile. Her servant Emma rushes over and demands that he leave the courtyard immediately so she can get back to work. Even Emma knows better than to try and stop the teacher from scolding her, because she's already got a bad feeling about what's coming next. Talia lets down, promising she'll make sure Emma never gets fired from the family, but Emma tells her this isn't what she actually means. Emma thinks that young Talia is already too talented to let anyone else respect her as a matriarch, and she only worries if Shell wasn't there. She really has a nagging question about why Talia seems so low in the world compared to her own sister, which makes her feel very annoyed and impatient all along. Emma is frantic as she dives into her bedroom to find her lost friend, but when she finally checks the door, Talia is already gone. Emma stirs her mind and quickly makes sure that everyone awake before heading to the palace where young Master Nox might be waiting. Talia finally finds Nox deep in the woods, and that sudden silence makes him freeze, leaving the boy completely alone. He's asking if she's still working around the house. Suddenly, the young swordsman sensed a threat and told his partner to stand back away from him. Did they all jump back in panic when that gray wolf started chasing after them? Talia stares at the blade in her hand and instantly knows what she's got. Nothing more than a dagger with her own right now. A shadowy figure in the trees starts chasing them toward the edge of the cliff as another dog joins its pack to follow suit. The gray wolf charged desperately after us. A terrifying feeling crashes over her while she watches him step into the ring of charge. In that split second, he swings his blade and vanishes entirely. She felt incredibly proud after seeing the wolf kill the beast perfectly. Nox stares through the window with a quiet determination as he thinks about how his brothers might have been following him. So she just laughs softly at the sight of him walking alone by the roadside and wonders why he still has that night out there. She stares at him, knowing he won't listen when she doesn't reply. Walking toward him, she took his hand and said nothing at all, just that he had suddenly become incredibly strong, which made her wonder if she should try to be like him. She looked out the window and spotted him there while she was curious about where he was heading. As always, she thought he had some kind of special training method. She told him this was why she followed him, and upon seeing this forest, she jumped right in without thinking at all. Now that Nox knows 3 new truths about her life, she believes him above all others and feels completely safe around him. The day truly begins to feel like home again. Last time she was only a little girl who didn't know how risky being around other people really can be in the dark. The young swordsman smiles at the girl and thinks, since she's one of my core characters, I can't just leave her here. He tells her to stay with him for now, but he clearly isn't trying to help her. Instead, he's making a deal so his family won't end up in a bad situation. She turned around with a big grin, feeling very sorry about everything that had happened. She wants to make sure he never makes a mistake like that again. She smiled, then looked down at the crowd, realizing that even with all their bravery, many hungry wolves had already been right there watching from the shadows. The young master ordered her to run away, then handed off the blazing torch to her. He tells her to get ready and move quickly, while at the same time swinging his sword at the wolves and thinking about what else he might need to watch out for later in the day. It looks like this world already knows how to work. No big bosses are coming yet, because it's part of the opening act, but soon someone stronger than you'll step in and turn into a giant gray wolf who was once your enemy before becoming an ally. He knows exactly whose foe he's got, but that doesn't guarantee a smooth ride through the road ahead. The wolf pack keeps pounding his face while he keeps chopping through them one by one until they stop trying to kill him. He remembers hearing those exact phrases he used over and over again while his mind was still a blank space, wondering if that weakness had been born of fear or just the most basic human flaw. Talia stares as the man slaughters thousands of wolves, wondering if he is still discovering that he holds something even bigger than just a greatsword. When she asks if he's really dead and Nox thinks her body might be fragile again, it just makes the whole situation even more exciting to watch. A massive gray wolf steps out of the shadows right in front of him, and that single sight makes him instantly recognize it as the elite pack leader. Soon, many guests from the royal court stepped out of the palace and plunged headfirst into the woods to hunt down the lost treasures. They found their footprints right in the woods, and suddenly they realize who has already stepped into the room. Emma is trying to convince the group to jump right into the dungeon, but Rodwell shuts her down with a sneer, telling her that jumping in is silly. He doesn't even care about the danger and keeps insisting she should wait for him to decide what's best. So when Rodwell tells the girl it's a forest and Reinhard hasn't cleared it yet, she hears a deep rumble in the woods before her ears are even buzzing. The head butler wonders why the young master stepped into the forest after all that time. He doesn't think this boy got there because of a mind troll monster, and while he watches the heavy footsteps, he realizes that nothing else can clear the area so fast. So nobody actually managed to break through that incredibly strong mana shield here. That tells us clearly that the young master made it all the way into this wild forest by themselves. Nox was so wrong about being a strong man. He can no longer pretend to be that powerful, even when it hurt him deeply. Emma knows exactly why Rodwell insists he has only one choice so they can get back together quickly. He needs his old magic trick to make the wild trees feel safer. Emma's face cracks open in a sudden burst of emotion as the quiet world rushes over her, and tears start to well up in her eyes, making her feel completely alone about what just happened. He watches the young swordsman slash through the forest until his eyes miss Talia, who is clutching a blade just as the wolves howl near her. She knows a lot about why he said that, so she stays away from the fight because it could really hurt anyone involved. She keeps her muscles tight so that when a fight happens, she runs away just in time for the best chance at life to still be there. It's scary to think how easy it feels to kill those kind of wolves because they're only worth 2.5 stars in the rating system. He really wants Talia to stay alert and ready to act when things get weird around here. He watched her study carefully and wondered how she managed so well even when she wasn't quite ready for a job yet. He fires an instant burst that blasts the beast away before he can even react. The black wolf charged with a terrifying grin and lunged directly toward his enemy, while he watched as he effortlessly cut through the beast's massive tail in an instant. He watched the other wolves pause before swinging back on him like a series of clumsy attacks, forcing him to keep slashing until finally they caught up with their own chaos. So the wolves are so ferocious and aggressive Talia becomes terrified for his safety. She thinks even though Nox told her to flee if it got dangerous, she can't bring herself to run away now, so she climbs up a tree and finally asks if he wants help. Talia looks up and asks, "Are you hurt?" He knew it wouldn't matter if she asked him for help, but instead he made sure she thought he was okay, even though that wasn't really what they needed at this moment. The air in the room felt lighter when she realized Nox wasn't hurting anyone. As if a thunderclap hit him, his eyes widened and he felt the chill of the world pressing against him because he had finally revealed his most embarrassing weakness. He knows it isn't really over, but he notices that the elite wolf finally stands up straight. The elite wolf circling him made him look suspicious before charging straight toward Nox at maximum speed. But the elite wolf uses a sneaky trick. He first flees to hide, then suddenly rushes back, jumps over him on his back, hits his shoulder with great force, and runs off to avoid getting hit again. It happened again this time. The young master knew it wasn't supposed to be a 2.5-star monster. Instead, an elite wolf far outsmarted him. He quickly adjusted his tactics because the gray wolf was smarter too, cunninger in ways he didn't expect, and already spotted where this beast was hiding, ready to strike again when the last 2 attacks left him completely stunned. He knew he had to stand his ground first. Suddenly, the wolf lunged at Nox again. This time, Nox got hit but missed, as if the beast was waiting for him to make a big move and let out an opening. The elite counters right away, yet the swordsman still couldn't predict it. He's wondering why the excitement feels so heavy after playing that game over and over again. He knew that being so quick to judge someone as foolish was really foolish itself. Talia thrust her blade forward and saw a flash where she had been staring long ago. The wolf believes that if he can carve out a spot for himself, his peers will join him on the hunt too. It's Talia who made the variable go wild. The moment he saw the shadowed gray wolf, he jumped and swung his blade like a lightning strike, crushing its head into the earth in one powerful motion. Talia watches 2 wolves race after killing an elite, then drops down a tree and sprints back toward Nox's side. He looks like he needs someone to talk to. He laughs to tell her that survival depended on her kindness, then worries whether she might be the one making sure he gets killed again in the future. Did she ask if he had gotten hurt right after seeing those big cuts on his shoulder? He tells the team they're fine because the small scrape isn't serious at all. Suddenly, a small spider grabs her shoulder and starts screaming as if it knows what's happening. She jumped out of the room so fast she grabbed him in her arms like a lifeline. She grabs his hands so tightly that she holds on to him as if the web of his life was coming apart, saying softly, "There's a spider in here." The young master stares after the man he has spent weeks chasing and wondering exactly how long he will hold on to this incredible person. Even though he's really interested in knowing the truth about her fear, she might just want to embrace him instead. She almost laughed when he flicked the spider aside, but her curiosity turned to wonder. What exactly does it scare her, or is it just that creepy look of one? Does she ask him if he's not scared of spiders? Her eyes widened as the swordsman shouted about her new status, but she couldn't believe her own heart could not hold herself up to the challenge of becoming a true knight anymore. She turns her anger into a sharp look as he looks down at her, knowing the moment is coming so quickly. Emma knows that surviving was a gamble because her friend could be scared right now, so she keeps her head down while they rush out of the woods to avoid being caught by someone who might just scream. It's morning and the search party is still outside waiting, but Emma can't help wondering if they actually made it or not. Emma bursts into a quiet spot where the air feels thick with worry, knowing her friend's disappearance could tear families apart. Just as she speaks, Rodwell steps forward, watching how many kids have vanished in this area, while strangers whisper that Rainer family lacks any true care. Suddenly, Emma raises her hand toward the mist-laden woods and tells everyone they are no longer alone inside it. They watch the forest vanish as the missing child's home was destroyed. Despite some doubt, she believes the truth. The myoma is indeed getting up. He reveals that clearing the woods made the very things he was hoping for become real. Suddenly, everyone in the forest is watching as Emma declares that her young master must have done something terrible to make this happen. Then, a new young master steps forward, while Talia also rushes toward them from outside. The old man stood there in the tall grass, staring down at a pile of logs, whispering about how impossible it was to make wood vanish from his sight. He felt like something was missing, but then he saw her hand shake and smiled, saying that if she could find him, everything would be okay. The old man in the basement stared at his reflection and let out a long, trembling breath before finally letting go. Knox stares blankly over a crowd of strangers as they all gather to hide their secrets together. As Emma sprinted after Talia, she felt tears of joy rolling down her face while she hugged the girl tightly. Then suddenly, a voice from behind said, "Rodwell knows the family is also scared of him disappearing." Knox was struck dumb by the terrifying thought. His family wouldn't care about money or fame if they found out he had a heart full of that kind of good-for-nothing goodness. They would just panic over losing their reputation, not because of anything he could do for them. Emma decides to gently pull back the curtain so she can speak directly to Talia about those 7 rules again, urging her to keep them in mind for sure. Talia finally says her apology again because she knows she's been making things worse since the last time. Emma giggled and told herself she couldn't hold back the laughter because Talia must have been so mean when he made the accusation, feeling like a lowly maid who shouldn't have dared to blame him for it, as if the father would be teaching her exactly how to handle such situations personally. Knox thought the girl looked incredibly tough for a maid, so when he checked her status, she had a full 4.5 stamina meter ready to go. Emma steps forward and offers her hands a warm thank you as she takes in the mysterious swordsman who has been guarding their little miss lately. Talia wondered if she had truly planned to join him, so he gently told her she carried all her own load and didn't need to worry about beating herself up too hard. After that, everyone pulled back and returned home to the castle. The young master walked into his own room, feeling relieved he was finally done with the trouble. He stared at the blank spot where Rodwell should be, knowing a knight would never walk there on its own. "Did you see him?" she asked nervously, her voice trembling with fear. He looked around to find no one else in that quiet room and wondered why Talia had disappeared so quickly. The system confirmed that he had finally gotten his new gift, the Black Flame Ring. A gentle voice tells him all the details of what's happening inside. He read about how special the effect is. When he fights down an enemy while wearing that weapon, he steals a tiny bit of their life energy and turns it into his own. The more powerful the enemy he hits, the bigger chunk of strength he takes from them. He knew the Black Flame Ring could steal away a person's life force, but knowing that one's life doesn't last forever meant the ring would never actually give them any extra time to live at all. He paused over his ring because only a tiny fraction of his energy could be taken away, but with terminal illness in sight, it was no longer easy to fight back. Instead, he chose to push forward anyway, knowing that surviving and growing even slightly would be far better than letting his life fall apart on the edge of death. He slipped the ring onto his finger. He knew exactly how to summon a rush of power, so he called out to Rona right as she stood by her door, ready to help him. In a split second, she steps inside and wonders who knows what's going on inside him. He told her she might be able to. She felt a chill in her heart because that moment made her think about seeing her own bare back, so she asked him gently if he could also look at it. The young master suddenly snaps into anger and yells, demanding exactly what the girl is saying, before he flicks her forehead against his own with his finger. He laughs as she explains that the pain in his hand feels terrible, but he thinks it's just how much it hurts to be so angry himself. The guy says he'd give up his fight if the girl didn't speak too much nonsense, so he offers to do it over again. So the woman tries to convince him that winning back makes more sense than losing at all, and they both bet 2% of their paycheck on each other before the game even starts. He wins right after she makes his move, and they both cheer as a new story begins. She was shocked by the sudden result. After losing her job, she asks him if he really thinks it's right for a good family son to cut a servant's salary by 20%. He smiles and agrees, saying that as the rumored good-for-nothing of the Rainer family, he decided not to care about trivial things. She took a deep breath and bowed deeply before him while offering sincere apologies for what had happened. It told him all about his bad habits. They got stuck in his wrist right now. You know what he does when those annoying little things happen? He gets really mad about them. Angry face, pouting face, face with symbols on mouth, Rona feels a surge of excitement as she listens to him plan how to stop her paycheck cut, knowing she'll be the one to make him feel better with just an ice pack and a damn towel. She worries that her young master isn't looking good, so the swordsman just wants to be satisfied getting the ring now. Time flies by, and despite 6 months of waiting, Carl and the Black Flame rings still remain with him because no one used them yet. That moment when Nox was finally pulled back from the brink of trouble with a serious, grounding resolution. He didn't want trouble or punishment, yet he couldn't believe his luck when the parents should be paying him. Turning to Rona, he asked if she shared that feeling of disbelief. She simply told him her job is as maid to the family and that a bad word would cut off her salary entirely. Nox swore on his hand, insisting his salary will go down just like she planned. Hearing this, Rona immediately told him how much the patriarch hates him. He looked at himself in the mirror, wondering if he was making sense while Carl grew up around him. He knows that continuing as before won't work anymore. Time itself seems to be rushing toward a new end right in front of him. He's finally seeing his last day in this world and sees the clock ticking down on a schedule that ends at midnight. This fancy robot actually seems to care about him more than he cares about himself. So he politely thanks it and then thinks it's time to call his dad for some private business. Rona knocked on Rodwell's door, announcing she had just finished warming bathwater for him. But as soon as he entered his room, Rodwell realized the patriarch was summoning him first. The old man, watching from his chair at a quiet table, felt tears welling up his eyes as he traced the history of those nights when monsters roamed and people were swept away by night raids. He remembered how terrible the situation had been. He hopes one of his sons might eventually learn how to wield the ultimate black sword. He knows he can't count on luck. The only way to survive is if one person gets strong enough to actually save him. Rodwell walks into the room and tells the young master he's coming right up. Nox is staring at the clock, thinking his friend Tio is way behind schedule and shouting to Rodwell, "Send me." He pondered how the forest of the missing child deserved clearing, yet he couldn't imagine Nox doing it himself. So he decided the right thing to do is to give him the prize for his hard work on this beautiful spot. Tio told his son that he had summoned the boy to talk about how much his reward was worth, but the only thing he wanted from him were a few quick words. The young swordsman stares at the empty room as a single, quiet voice whispers, "You will fulfill just one request, no matter what it is." He watches in wonder, while wondering why this particular moment feels so special, because his father has never asked him for such a reward before. The dad is always tough and strict, but he's still curious whether that's really all there is. He felt like he was either shot or stabbed by a very powerful force of nature. His dad asked me if I'm ready to ask him what's in the bag. His dad said he'll give his son whatever he wants, and when the young man became the leader of a new army, he swore to anyone who came to fight for him that he would let him hold power. He didn't think his dad was serious at first. So after all the time he waited, he finally decided to guess that the man was right. His dad explained that when he asked something like this, the kid would suddenly realize how ridiculous it was and change his mind about what he thought of him. This sudden realization came from Tio showing his deep trust in him, because he genuinely believed his dad wouldn't let a child do foolish things again. He immediately asked to think over the idea for just a few days. His dad agreed and let him go home, but always warned him about the dangers of doing things like before. Naturally, Nox nods and agrees to his father's warning. That evening as Talia heads toward the palace gates, she calls Nox over to their new school on the way back. She insists he see her even though he doesn't say anything or show any feelings at all. Rodwell, the head butler, says Nox needs to answer whenever a lady asks him anything. She laughed with a look in her eyes because the old man refused to let her finish the job yet. Talia gets so flustered that she suddenly agrees to his plan, thinking the giant spider won't scare her at all because he'll be the one doing the spotting. The remark made her so upset that she got angry and then punched him in his stomach. She's promising he'll get ready to take back the throne when she becomes a full-fledged knight herself. So he gets ready for her. He stares at her as if the question itself was a threat, wondering exactly why she might be planning to take his life. Emma thanked everyone, particularly Master Nox, who had been rude and demanded how much he owed her as a maid from the Styliner family. He saved her little Miss Talia, and she said she'd thank him once more. Talia and Emma stepped out of the mansion, watching her friend tell the story of how she'd turned his bad intentions into a great gift. It's not like he saved you by accident, he said loudly to everyone else in the room, waving goodbye as they made their way back toward the exit. Nervous Nox jumped back as the shadow disappeared behind him. He stares at his phone and thinks, why am I suddenly so numb? My fingers are shaking a little. Even though he can't figure out why something happened, he really likes how much he's having fun with it right now. He tells me his final days are only 16 because his heart has stopped beating for 15 days. He decided that his day was completely full of time left for nothing else. A few days later, when the young master finally got ready in his messy room, Rona stepped out to tell him he needed new servants. He nearly laughed at the news, but remembered why she said it. Then, Rodwell walked in and greeted him with a friendly good morning, asking exactly what was on his mind about her visit. Nox was surprised to hear the news. Rodwell had already told his fellow students about Elder Academy's new maid, who will now join them from this day forward. She stepped in front of him with a warm smile and said, I'm your exclusive maid for all of today, and my name's Lavilia. The young master glanced at her data so fast he almost missed the moment she walked away from him. He found some very important news about his partner. They work perfectly together and keep an eye on his every move, which gives him a nagging feeling of awareness that he's not alone in the world. Suddenly the system told him his last days were just 140. It felt like time was running out on you, but your biggest strength right now, your excellent grades. You were just struggling to keep up with the heavy penalties, yet you were still climbing higher every single day. Soon the boy will get admitted to Elden Academy, and Rona tells him that after 2 months of waiting, he'll finally head to Eldenek and wonder how nervous it feels. She wonders if it's actually okay to leave her home and head straight to school right now. Rona cried up at the window and whispered to him, saying they were already beginning to miss each other again. He pauses the scene so she won't get too agitated and then says, I'm not going to cut your paycheck. You're already rich. She laughs along with it. The old master wonders if he'll still get enough time to beat up his new student before that second month ends, because without boosting his power just a crack, he certainly won't make it back to school in time. Eldon has found himself trapped behind the Empire's elite academy, a fortress built on monstrous strength, while his character arcs shift from hero to cruel villain as he survives there and walks down the path into the heart of action. Right now, the world feels so heavy and scary for him. Rona keeps telling him this time, you need a fresh set of maidens and new servants. Lavilia assured him she'd do everything she could to make sure he feels supported in his life. The young master felt he couldn't breathe in here without the man leaving, so he insisted he'd be staying right now. In a twist of fate, T.O. von Rienhofer stands as an all-time legend in both the world and among the strongest beings. Yet when others ask how he climbed to power, they often point solely to his blade. But behind that unmatched skill lies a dark secret. While his expertise is undeniable, the real reason he rose so high is that he keeps everything around him on edge, making everyone suspicious of his every move. T.O. tells Lavilia that he really wants a lot from her today. Even though he only heard that his loved one had been knocked out of favor by the Lavilia line, he is sure that when she succeeds, the Rainher people won't let anything get between them both. He's angry at the way she assured him she'd help him out, but his anger turns into a smile as he watches her try to calm down. She tells him exactly what to do. She'll watch over Nox closely and make sure nothing gets out her system right away. T.O. always reminded his daughter that the person he truly cares for is always his own master. She steps outside her office and vows to never step back, no matter what happens next. On the other side of the room, the young master lies curled up on his mattress, staring at a map and wondering where Lavilia goes. Nix knows T.O. probably wants to confirm whether the person inside Nox is actually Nox, because demon possession is such a frequent thing within the inner lunatics. Nox is a character whose body was stolen by the number 1 demon, Bale, from the original storyline. T.O. smiled at the news that he would be free to go and never found out who he truly was, so he knew his time was now over. He knows that Lavilia is the real culprit. Even though she isn't in the main plot, throwing her away would be a total waste of time because, originally, she was meant to lead the Levia family after her father and mother died at the hands of her uncle. But now that's a different story entirely. In the end, she turned out to be a maid for the Rainher family, which allowed her to get away with her freedom. She wears a smile all day, making her look like sunshine. Yet underneath that cheerful face lies someone who is so angry and broken they could break themselves apart right in front of anyone watching. She decided to cut herself off before the first chapter even began because she couldn't take it anymore. He's staring at the screen and wondering exactly how to push the plot forward. Maybe he decides to save a potential victim by taking the risk of strangling himself, even though it puts him in danger. It's just a week later when the old man tells both his maids to go hunt down monsters in the woods while he stays behind. They're ready to help him out and can't stop talking about their own plans. But Rona gets a big surprise when she hears she has to leave due to illness. However, Lavilia immediately agrees to follow her orders. Rona stood up and whispered, "Don't settle for anything unless you're absolutely sure you want it." The young master watched with intense interest, wondering why the maid had suddenly become terrified when he asked her about hunting monsters. That was so absurd. She quickly gave him an incredulous reply that made his curiosity well-worn. Rona was surprised when he told her he knew she'd run out of leaves, because she had already spent them on the tree. Rona suddenly started tearing up right in front of everyone and asked her boss, "Is it okay if I'm off taking sick leave today? How did you let me do that?" Nox questions how much Nox actually remembers, while immediately warning her that if she ignores his advice to save money, the man will cut off almost exactly half of her yearly earnings for starting over. Rona tears up so hard she's begging, but she can't decide which weapon is better, the soft bow or the sharp sword. Lavilia reaches out to tell Sir Rodwell exactly when the estate will end, so she can begin working on her own tasks. He suddenly remembered that from this very day, raising his lifespan to the top of his list would finally be his main focus. So he's finally out there and ready to do whatever he wants. Then the group mounts up and rides down into the woods, while Mr. Tio watches them pass through from his office window. A few days later, in the forest where nature had been stripped away by clear cutting, Nox fights another gray wolf and finds himself losing only a tiny sliver of its soul. The system tells him that this has taken almost 2 hours to harvest. He killed so many wolves that he wondered if he had wiped out every wolf in the forest. After getting 2 hours of life for one hunt, this must have been an incredibly successful trip. The world turned quiet when countless dead wolves lay scattered across the earth. Leavilia asks if Leavalai is actually still awake after a long day of searching for the hidden treasure, offering Leavalai some fresh water to cool his mind while they wait for the sun to rise. The old master suddenly remembers he didn't turn on the machine that sped up the search for the genius, so it took him forever to get there. It's a real shame that this means he's just making it to 1 hour. He might have figured out how to fix it mathematically, but the fact remains that nothing could ever balance perfectly, and certainly no monster killer would make him work for an extra hour every single day. The most urgent worry he has is that the world isn't quite full enough for all those scary monsters to get away. He keeps chasing down the bad guys all day, and by now he's already cut off more than half of the pack. He wonders if his dream of living a perfect life could truly stay intact as time goes on. He thinks the absence of monsters nearby isn't helping much either. Lavilia says she can't believe the man thinks not being scary is okay, so anyone who heard him might have turned out like a weird guy. The news got through that nothing could help, so he told all of his maids they had to go back to the mansion right now. Lavilia asked herself if she could make warm bathwater for him, but promised to keep the temperature as cozy as possible. The swordsman waited for that eager nod from a supportive genius, knowing he'd be hungry and needing time to prepare, so she had to ensure they were right about when it was best to bathe before dinner. Ronan nudged the door handle gently and said, "Don't forget my things. I'm cleaning your place." Nox wanted to know exactly what Levius served while walking through the woods before he left. The girl's surprise was so big, she nearly jumped out of the way when she saw the news on the radio. He thought the best sword in the world might as well be thrown away because, even if it was perfect and incredibly powerful, he would never choose to keep it and would still have no choice but to discard it. The swordsman watches her stay completely quiet and says, that's actually the best answer she could possibly give. She whispers into the silence, her voice barely audible as she hesitates before finally answering with a single, careful word. She can't even finish her sentence when the man stops her talking. He didn't say anything about being sorry, but he smiled so hard his eyes even watered them from the sadness of the lie. She says nothing but smiles when he tells her she's always been his own person, even if the people around her never know it. So if she ever needs a friend like that, he'll let her use his hand and walk along with her. It's not about trusting each other. Everyone knows how to use each other instead. After all, that's exactly the kind of connection she shares with him. In Rona and Lavilia's quiet room, the question of whether the young master was truly too much struck a taut tone that made her hesitate before answering. Levia tells the team that while she teaches him how to train, he often insists on running alongside her so they don't get bored and never want to finish a session without her by his side. Lavilia giggled softly as she told nothing, but the story went on. She stares at the pile of papers in her hand, wondering if the news about Master Nox's new life is real or just a story someone else told to keep their secrets hidden for too long. She thought those rumors were likely fake because it's so rare for anyone to change their mind about such things. But the truth is, they told him he defeated his twins in one move and got the right to join the elite academy. He's supposed to be the real anchor of the family, totally different from her, who has completely slipped away while being a legitimate heir. She's staring at the words he spoke last night and wondering if they actually mean something real this morning. The word for the day of the Reincarnation's home quickly began to circulate as if nothing existed at all. A dangerous rumor has spread around town, saying Lavilia left her family and lost all hope for the Rayner household, leaving her as an isolated outsider who is certainly not expected to serve them. A letter arrived calling her a hopeless, selfish family head who had let their own blood run dry, declaring she would face endless punishment and losing every claim to her lineage. It was simply too late for her to hide away inside the Rayner house, and it makes sense why they have been so careful about it. The girl isn't really a servant. Instead, she's just a common woman with no family left, so she can't even pretend to be a maid anymore and is being used by someone who clearly doesn't want her. She will surely get cut off and handed over to someone else very soon. She hops into the kitchen hall and greets every maid in turn. Rona called her name, and when everyone turned around in surprise at the look of shock, it seemed like every single one had heard about rumors yet, until she was already used to being ignored with those eyes. Lavilia is torn because she's curious if Rona knows there are secrets in the rumors, or if they're just a playful prank on her feelings for her. Regardless of what's happening, she knows Rona must be acting terribly for the moment. Soon Rona and the young master realize together that they and their friends are all doing foolish things, and the end is right about to happen. The young master sits in his room, staring not just at Livia, but also at Tio, who must have received a letter himself. He knows that all the crimes framed against her father were fabricated, yet he can't help her, because no matter how hard she tries to predict what butterfly effect would happen if he helped her survive, nothing changes. They go back into the forest again, and he keeps killing the monsters there. Lavilia looks at Rona and wonders if the young master really isn't so cold for being right now. Rona says that she once used to be kinder, but now she seems like she's been too harsh lately. He's been furious all day and can't seem to calm down. The quiet world of Lavilia suddenly shudders, and she can't help but feel a sudden wave of unease that makes her mind race behind her like a stormy ocean. Nox is staring at the screen, wondering whether the game is coming back soon or if it's just been too long since last time. Nox hesitates over the monster in the forest when only 20% of the monsters are left alive. He knows this is the hidden boss and wonders if killing it will actually boost his stats. He jumps out of the woods and sees someone running away. It runs at a totally wild and uncharted speed. He thinks the creature might be a hidden boss, only to be shocked when he discovers it's actually a very powerful, high-level Wasp King. The young master's fear makes him hesitate before the scary sight, though his strength lets him swing away from the dangerous creature without hitting anyone. Suddenly, Lavilia leaps over Nox and the wasp, so it doesn't get stuck in their arms while she gets stung by itself. He wondered, why does she choose to save me when I just had the chance to dodge or block? He looks around with wide eyes, wondering exactly how many brave souls would dare jump over the scary beast that appears right before his eyes. She decided to use this chance wisely so that she could save herself. The genius wizard's hand trembled as he clicked his finger and slammed a golden key into his wrist lock, ready to unleash the hour of magic. It was late summer when Lavilia remembered her mother telling her father that no matter how much she fell, her knees would remain forever bleeding, even after every single day had passed since they were just a child. The old advice she heard from her parents was that her body's injuries wouldn't always fade away, yet a truth about the pain in her heart didn't stay with her at all either. She wondered aloud whether those same warnings were meant to prophesic her own soul, just as they did for her knees. She also remembered a quiet moment when Nox questioned who he actually served, and instead of answering, she thought about how her own family had died and what that question meant to her right now. Nox walked home and saw his mother waiting for him, but she didn't see anything at all, and he smiled a bit. The dark storm brews over town as Nox and Rona sprint toward the terrified girl who just vanished from the forest. The boss finally crumbles under the assault, and the heroes get their legendary loot instantly. The young master drops his staff as Lavilia trembles in fear, knowing that the old man has already said she can't go anymore and will bring her home before they fight again. In her own head, Lavilia knew that he was telling a trick because she asked herself, what does an ordinary person try to do when they feel so tired? She thinks something's wrong with him because he suddenly shakes slightly and seems angry when he speaks. In the palace, Tio worries about what he heard. He reads the letter and learns from Rodwell that the truth is clear. The family plans to sever their connection entirely with Miss Lavilia. Tio decided on a bold plan because he felt that taking control of the Lavilia family was not just for them, but as a way to stabilize their already shaky situation after losing their previous leader. If a family crisis makes the next generation too vulnerable and their leader, Reinher, decides to keep them under control, but then turns away when the family leaves, that's exactly how things can go wrong in such a chaotic place. Because the document was written on paper, which means he lost all legal powers as his direct descendant, he knew that no plans could ever happen without first changing every single thing about it. Rodwell looked at the man who was saying it couldn't be fixed and asked, "What do you think we should do with her?" So when a master knocks his beloved maid walks into a new school where no one knows her name, she is treated like an imposter and makes everyone look down upon her by default. That's exactly what Rodwell said, so that they wouldn't have to deal with it awkwardly on their own. Tio nods in agreement and then says, "Yes, I have exactly the same idea as him." Suddenly, a servant steps into the office and Rodwell stammers about why he's jumping in here without asking for permission. The servant bowed and told them Knox had brought back a wounded maid who had died of poison while chasing. He also warned them that the dangerous antidote had been given by Knox without his permission, so now they must report it to him. When Rodwell asked if Knox had mixed the Mundere purification potion, the servant immediately confirmed it was there. Tio stares at the old maid, feeling a heavy weight in his chest as he questions whether she has become too familiar with him yet, worrying desperately about whatever terrible outcome might happen from these sudden, unspoken feelings. In the hospital,